So next step is bag G. So here we have some more parts for the rear end assembly. So we're gonna open this bag and see what we have here. So we got the rear wing mount, we got this chassis brace, the gearbox cover, some parts for the turnbuckles, we have the body mount, some hardware, bolts, screws, and the sway bar links right here. Alright, so the first step I normally start with is inserting these nuts here in the wing mount. So they get in there and then they lock in place when you assemble it with the shock tower later on. I also put the nuts here into its pockets for the wing buttons. So I just press them in there. These ones will be glued later on, but that will be once I have put the screw in. Next step is mounting the rear end here with the rear diff. So I push the diff into its place here and spins very free and nice in there. And I add the gearbox cover here. So I like to start mounting the rear chassis brace onto the gearbox here. So you take one of these long cap head screws and you add the red shim, the 1mm shim that comes in this bag as well. So this one goes on there. So this cap head screw with the red shim runs through the gearbox and you tighten the chassis brace with it on the other side. So not all the way down, and then you take the last little bit with your 2.5 wrench so you don't strip any threads and you make sure it sits nice and tight. So just like that, and then we're gonna take the optional bag that we had early on when we built the front end, because there we have the rear shock tower, we have the other parts for the upper links here so that we can assemble them. So here we have bag OPC1, which come with the shock tower, the turnbuckles, and the other two plastic parts for the turnbuckles, together with the stuff for the front, which we have already taken out of this bag. So next thing, I like to add all the lock nuts here on the back side of the gearbox. So this is these are nuts for when you put the shock tower on here, it runs through and locks it with the nuts on the back side here. So just like that, then you take your rear shock tower here, you have the plastic inserts. Again, this is stock, so it comes with the middle position for the shock tower. But before we put the shock tower on, we need to put also the body mount on the gearbox here, otherwise we won't be able to get to it once we have the shock tower there. So you take your flat head screw here and you mount the body mount to the gearbox. Now that is done, next step will be the shock tower. So we're gonna drop it down in between the gearbox cover and the gearbox here. So like this, again, we're gonna start with the screws, which is like deciding the shock tower height, and these screws are also for the wing mounts. So they are the long cap head screws. You run them here on the bottom hole of the wing mount, and these are the two screws that are going to run through the tower and the gearbox to the back side here where we mounted the M3 nuts just before. When you're gonna finish the last little bit, you need to hold the M3 nut in place with your thumb, otherwise it's going to pop out once the screw pokes through. So just like that, and then I always like to finish it off with my wrench, like you know by now. Perfect. So now we have the shock tower in place, and then we can go ahead and add the two bottom screws here as well, which are the flat heads that are in the bag. Again, hold the M3 nut with your thumb so it doesn't fall out. And then we do the last little bit by hand. So just like that, so now the diff, the pinion, everything is moving free, and you will have the perfect amount of play, as we don't need to use any diff shims when putting the diff into the gearbox. Really nice feature here on the Mayako MX-8. Next step, when you have the shock tower mounted, is to secure the top two holes of the wing mount as well, and this you do from the front side of the shock tower with two cap head screws. So this is what the M3 lock nut was before when I put it into the wing mount. So now these screws are going to lock together with the nuts here, like you can see in here. Next step after that is to assemble your turnbuckles. And like I said, for the front end, these have some markings on them, and I always like to run the marks towards the left of the car. So you have the straight plastic part is on the inside of the tower, and this curved one is on the outside where the hub is. You can push a wrench through like this if you feel it's a little too hard to thread it on by hand. And then on the other side, you take one of the curved ones here. Sometimes you need to use the X-Acto to make it a little easier for you to thread it on the turnbuckle. So you just take the X-Acto and use it on the edge here on the inside, chamfer it a bit, and it will thread on there nicely and more easy. Something like that, and then the same procedure for the other side. Now again, make sure to check the marking so you don't put the two curved ones on the side where the marking is, because then you have failed what you're looking for by placing them towards the left of your car. So one side should be with the curved one closest to the marking, and the other side should have the straight plastic piece closest to the marking. So something like that, and you have both sides even to the center of the turnbuckle, and then you can finish it off later on when it's on the car. So like this, you see what I mean here. I have one of the straight parts closest to the marking and one of the curved parts closest to marking, because then they will be mounted in the same direction when you have them on the car. So now that is done, now you can go ahead and mount the links here for the sway bar. So you pop the small ball in on one of the ends and the bigger one on the other end. Make sure they are free and nice, and they are. So next step will be to mount these links to the arm here. So these sway bar links are mounted the opposite way of the front end, like I explained earlier. So on the front end they would be mounted in this way, but then the angle when you mount the sway bar would be wrong. So on the rear you will have to mount them in this way, so that the part where you lock the sway bar into will be pointing towards the front, and you have the ball inside the link here towards the back. So here you're going to use 2 button head screws for mounting them to the arm. And same thing on the other side. Now the sway bar links are mounted onto here, and it's time to get the sway bar, which is a 2.5 in this kit. So 2.3 front, 2.5 in the rear. Again, you can see that with the engraving here in the center of the sway bar. So here in the rear I start by pushing the sway bar through the holes here in the gearbox cover. Then it's time for these brown aluminum or gunmetal aluminum collars to go next to the bearings, one for each side. And here you have the small little set screw. So again, at this point you want to make sure that the sway bar is right in the middle, which it is now, and then you can tighten these set screws down and making sure that the sway bar is still running free. So again, you want to align the set screws so that they are at the same spot, like right in the left side, so that one is not down here and one is up here, because then the sway bar will be able to bind up. So if you have them on the same spot, it's you're more likely to have a free moving sway bar, which is what you're looking for. So just like this. The last step of assembling the sway bar is mounting the ends here to the suspension arms. So you push the sway bar through the aluminum ball there, and I always like to have my sway bar so that it sits like flush with the back side of the ball, more or less. So if you can see it in the camera here, the sway bar is just flush here on the back side of the ball. So we'll do the same thing for the other side. And now you have a sway bar that is working properly here in the rear end. The last step of this bag is putting the link onto the tower here. So these balls, they go on the inside when you mount the links to the tower, and the other ball, the other style, goes on the outside on the curved plastic ones here for the rear hub. So you want to push them in there. Just like that. And then the other ball goes, like I said, on the straight part of the plastic. So now we have our turnbuckles for the rear end done. And we're going to take our cap head screws here and mount them to our shock tower. Again, we want to add some Loctite when doing this. So I add a bit of Loctite that is going to be used for the threaded balls here that we have on the inside, securing the turnbuckle to the shock tower. Take our 7mm wrench to hold the ball down while we are wrenching here. A good start is the middle hole for the link position here on the rear, as well as it was in the front. So just making sure you put them in the middle. I'm going to spin this ball around because it was on the other side of the turnbuckle. So like this, the ball is pointing towards this tower, and the curved part is pointing towards the top here on the outside. So now we have the turnbuckles mounted to the rear end as well. So now we can go ahead and finish this last step by just putting the wing buttons on for now. Obviously we will be removing them later on when we're gonna work on the rear wing and mount the rear wing onto the car. So I just put these on here for now so that I know where they are. Last thing, what I like to do is I like to add a bit of glue here on the lock nuts that goes into the to the wing mount. So I just add a drop of glue on both sides, and I do the same thing here on the front where the screws go through the gearbox, just to make sure that they are in place when you're gonna work on the stuff the next time. So just a little bit of a drop is fine, and that is it for this bag. So let's move on to the next one.